So we'll begin a series of talks on the chakras in the human body. We'll begin with the Mooladhara. I'll briefly explain what a chakra is because in real terms, nobody is ever told what a chakra is. Until you progress to a certain level, you really cannot comprehend what a chakra is. Lots of books, unfortunately, are written on the matter, and as a yogi, when I look at those books, I am well aware that these people are just repeating what they've read from other books. They have no personal experience of the matter. Almost 90% of the books on the chakras are written like that. Most of them stealing the original material from John Woodruff, Arthur Avalon. He translated the first books on Kundalini Yoga into English. Most of them are there. Today it has become, the new age has completely taken over the entire chakra system. It's very touching to see how much faith and enthusiasm they have, but the fact of the matter is they really know very little about the chakras. You have to be in hardcore yoga and you have to be with a teacher who knows these things, and then as you progress, more and more about the chakras are revealed to you. So in many books and many places you will find they say that when the energy channels, which are called nadi, see, this chakra system does not exist in the physical body. The energy system does not. It exists in the pranic or the ki. So the channel through which the energy flows is called a nadi. It is exactly like a nerve, except that it exists not in the annamaya kosha, which is the food body or the physical body. It exists in the pranamaya kosha, which is the vital body, the prana or the ki body. So the channel through which the energy flows is called a nadi. And in many books you will find that where three nadis cross, that is a chakra. That's not actually accurate. Where three nadis cross, you get what is called a marma. And the martial artists of all the worlds know that. In South, we know it because we have the oldest martial art, Kalaripat. And if you hit a person on the marma, you can cause a lot of damage. Now that's a very complex it's a very complex process because you cannot hit at the same time any time of the day on a marma and get the same result. Even the marma that you hit on, it changes according to the time of day, and the kind of breathing that you do. And so there are multiple. But there are certain points in the body where you can really, it's very easy to feel the marma. For instance, what is the little dent under your nose? Do you know what that is called? There is a scientific name for it. The filter. Yeah, and there are a hell of a lot of nerve clusters there also, but also it's for some reason tremendous amount of marmas there, and a chakra, and there is a chakra in the bridge of your nose. So a lot of the breathing, they recommend that you focus on that. They don't, it's not the tip of the nose, it's actually the bridge of the nose, because by focusing on that you actually activate the energy. But a chakra is a center, a wheel. That is exactly what a chakra is called, or sometimes it's called a spiral or a lotus. It is a significant center for the transmission of the energy, of the life energy, of the vital energy, the energy that keeps us going. We all know that there are 7 main chakras in the human body, but there are actually many multiple subsidiary chakras all over. The chakras also extend beyond the physical body. There are chakras outside your body, above your head, below your feet. They extend. But all those are complicated, they are not necessary. But the truth of the chakra is a process to enable karma to work out in your body. Chakras are how the vasana samaskaras which you accumulate from lifetime to lifetime. I am not defining vasana samaskara. Please go look up my videos on karma, I will, because I've spoken very extensively. The Vasana Samaskaras create our personality, the Vasana Samaskaras create our span of life. The chakras are how the karma forms. The chakras are how rupa happens, how manifestation happens. The chakras, they start every time a life is created. First, the 7 primary chakras are created, then the rest of the body, the rest of the energy being. First, an energy being has to be created, or an energy scaffolding has to be created. Around that, the human body takes shape. So, how fat we are, how thin we are, all that is because of the state of our energy body. So, if you change the shape of your energy body, your physical body also follows soon after. We don't realize that our body is exceedingly plastic actually. It's just that we have become so identified with the gross level vibration. So the chakras are a method by which karma is processed. A chakra is actually a process, karma processing. The chakra is a spot or a place or a vibrational center in the pranic body where karma is processed. Now, usually when we first become aware of it, we feel a certain swirling movement, clockwise, anti-clockwise. Many often it's like a funnel. We feel certain movement in it. The two ways people become aware of chakras is they feel movement and they are aware of tremendous heat. That is because there is resistance in the body to the flow of the prana, and that resistance actually causes friction. Sometimes if you're lucky, you feel it as cold flow of energy. But usually the two common ways in which people feel it is the swirling, the movement, or you feel heat. As you advance in your yoga, as you advance in what you are doing in life, what you're doing with your practice, you can actually feel the cold energy flow, which is actually a very good sign. So I'm not getting into too much detail about the chakra because it is very, very complex. Chakras are not fixed in any one spot also. They can actually move all over they can actually move all within your energy body. If certain kind of work needs to be done, your one lower chakra and one higher chakra can come together to a third spot, do the work and then go back to their original position. So there are all these multiple complex things which even that much I shouldn't say, but okay, it's there. But the foundational chakra is called the Mooladhara. Mooladhara Chakra, which is called the core or the root chakra. Moola means core or root. Adhar means the foundation. So the core foundation of all the chakras in the body, this is the most important for life, not for spiritual progress, but for the process of living, for the process of being embodied, which means that your Vasana Samaskara has decided to create a body and have certain experiences for 70, 80, 90, whatever, 100. So for embodiment, the core is always the Mool Adhar. Now the Mooladhara is actually a pretty big chakra and there is a lot of confusion about where precisely it is. Many people will tell you base of the spine. Yes, of course it is visible. It is not visible, it is sensed. You can never see a chakra because it is one of the big embarrassments that Dayananda Saraswati, founder of the Arya Samaj, he actually pulled a body out of the river and dissected it, hoping to see the chakras in the physical body, and since he couldn't, he rejected it. So, the Kundalini yoga people always find that to be a very, very amusing episode because in other ways he was a very, very good hatha yogi. He was tremendously good at hatha yoga, but he never had the first experience of this movement of the Kundalini, which is just quite a. Today, these things are, millions of people are experiencing them. That is the other embarrassment that medically we are not able to find the instrumentation to monitor these things. Almost everybody sitting here can feel the chakras and the energy moving because of the kriya that you have done and the processes that you have done. But there is no way that we are able to, and we are told that it is all your imagination, and then yogis shut that line of thought completely because they know very well it is not imagination. They know very well the transformation that is coming into their life. They tried in 1971. Swami Rama went to the Meninja Institute and he allowed them to poke and prod and experiment, and they got so angry. One of the scientists actually said, "I know what I'm seeing, but I refuse to believe it." you know. And then he used to do these experiments with insulation, and he found that somebody had cut the insulating wires, and he refused to continue with those experiments over there. And that has actually been a very bad thing because that news spread in the yogic community, and the yogis have sort of taken an unofficial diktat that we will not try to convince the scientific community anymore. They have no integrity. So that it is a sort of unofficial rule that don't waste time trying to convince the scientists, which is a pretty tragic thing in that sense. Because Swami Rama was probably the best person, and even today it's rather like Newton. Newton spent 85% of his actual recorded output is about alchemy and things like that, and his scientific work was just a hobby that he used to do. His major effort was always in alchemy. 85% of what Swami Rama has done at the Meninja Institute, they still haven't published the results. They are apparently processing them even. But of course, the reality is if you publish those results, your entire notion of what is accepted reality collapses. So they cannot accept that. So that is the reason they are not publishing. One day probably it will happen. So the proof of chakras, yogis don't require the proof. The medical establishment as it is currently constituted will refuse to accept any proof, so we are at an impasse. All I can tell you is that I do not speak about these matters without my personal experience, and I didn't learn all this from books. I learned all of this with my very, very hard personal experience. So I know what I'm talking about. And it's always very easy to discover somebody who's repeating what they've learned in the books and somebody who's had it from personal experience. So the Mooladhara Chakra is where the life energy flows in and out. Now every chakra is supposed to be described like a lotus, and it has multiple petals and things like that. Those are sort of allegorical or creative ways of describing it. Each petal is a particular kind of vibration, and it is a particular kind of fixity, it is a particular kind of limitation. As you progress in your yoga, the what they call the petals fall off, which means those limitations are shattered, and then you only have that core. Even if the petals fall off, that core of the flower remains, and that is what keeps life going. When even that falls off, then life is also at an end. And if you become enlightened and liberated, then that core is not allowed to form again. In the next lifetime, the Vasana Samskaras are not allowed to combine and start creating the chakras one more time. So it is a spiral movement of energy, and the experienced yogis know when the spiral is trying to interact with new karma and create one more life. So they will block that, they will prevent that spiral movement from happening. And so all the karma is worked out. But if your Mooladhara is damaged beyond repair, then you die. No, it's very tragic if any chakra is damaged, which can happen. It can happen at a psychic level, it can happen at a physical level. But if your Mooladhara is damaged beyond repair, then you cannot stay. So that is why it is called the Mooladhara, the core foundation. That is where, and most yogic processes, certainly all asanas, are fundamentally the three lower chakras they are strengthening. The problem today is that all the privilege, all the literature, everything is about the heart and above, and it's all about transcending and being loving and being compassionate and relating and merging in universal consciousness, and they've forgotten all the foundational the foundational work. Now, those who've done the 8 spiritual breaths, you are aware it is entirely Mooladhara functioning, because just the way we stand, we have to just keep the Mooladhara, and even at the very end, after all the 8 breaths, last affirmation, I will lock it in my physical body. Yes? So, sensible systems always know. Sensible systems always know. Now, there is another reason why the Mooladhara and the lower chakras are not, because they are in embarrassing places in the human body physically. The Mooladhara, they say, bases the spine, but it's actually the perineum. The perineum is the spot between genitals and anus. Now, if a teacher has to do some cleansing of the Mooladhara, or some, the hand has to go to a certain place which is culturally and societally, and so there are multiple problems with trying to. It's easier to work with the upper chakras. Just at a social level, it's easier to work with them. Now, ideally, if you do asana, you are supposed to be in a on natural, without any. Now, how is that possible for most people? Though there is a whole naked yoga thing going on in the West, they're actually doing the right thing. Even our 8 spiritual breaths, you're supposed to do if possible. Because of these social constraints, because of these personal embarrassments, many people, the 2 lower chakras are never properly developed. And because of the potential for misuse. I will fix your lower chakras, and many teachers do exploit their students on the pretense of fixing chakras. And sometimes it's not possible to just do the energy work. Sometimes you actually need to lay on the hands. And so there are these problems. Now people are reluctant to lay their own hands on their own Mooladhara also, out of sheer embarrassment and cultural conditioning, and so which is why in yoga it was always known that if there is a husband-wife thing, then it is very helpful, because then they can work on each other's Mooladhara and Swadhisthana. And they can transfer the energy, and the at least the embarrassing factors, though in our culture that also becomes now a greater problem, but it was always well understood, because of certain societal norms, certain kinds of input that would otherwise not be possible. Even when you're doing yoga, if you cannot completely be naked, there is a way of wearing one. This again is possible for men, because for women it is not possible, but there is a way of wearing that little langot kind of thing, and there is a way of tying a knot at the back which blocks off the base of the spine and then allows the energy to come from the perineum. Now both men and women are supposed to wear that and then do the asana. Most yoga schools don't even know that. And they don't know the knot also, because it's a very kind of complicated kind of knot to do. So there are certain, that is if you cannot do it completely nude, because if you do it completely nude, there is a whole influx of energy that happens separately. So there are these, from right in the beginning there were these problems. Right in the beginning there were these problems. So the Jains, they have that school where they all go nude. Digambara, they all go nude, because for this reason they understand that the 2 lower chakras, you cannot work on it as long as you have these societal conditionings. Now, it's very helpful if there is a married couple and they are both in sadhana, but both of them have to be in sadhana, they have to be in the same spiritual process, otherwise it doesn't work. If they're doing 2 divergent spiritual processes and they try to work with each other's Mooladhara and sadhana, Swadhisthana, that also doesn't work. So there are multiple problems with getting your Mooladhara to vibrate at its optimal level. There are multiple problems. Even in Reiki and all that, people, they do say, in the hand positions and all that. But everybody is fundamentally fixing the heart, fixing the throat, fixing the head. Yes? So what actually happens is we all become top heavy. From navel above, our energy body is fine, and navel below, our energy body is mess. But it has to be the Mooladhara. The Mooladhara has to be the strongest one. Now, the god, the deity, the devta, which just means the particular kind of the form of the vibration of the Mooladhara, is Ganpati. Which immediately tells you many things, because Ganpati is Vigna Harta and Vigna Karta, which means creator as well as remover of obstacles. So all the all the trouble that dissolves in your life, all the trouble that manifests in your life, both come from the Mooladhara. Most of us don't remember that aspect of Ganpati, that he is Vigna Karta also, that he is not only Vigna Harta, the remover of trouble. He is also the big time giver of trouble, the big time giver of obstacles. And the color is red, even though the basic tattva, the elemental vibration is earth, Prithvi. Because this is, the body is after all made of the earth vibration, so that now earth vibration instantly means life, the life energy, the length of life, the money, the state of health. So Mooladhara actually has three main functions. It determines your state of your health, it determines the state of your money, and it determines how long you will live. Now very often, spiritual communities, what do? They focus on the health part, that's it. The money part and the length of life is, and there are certain mudras where you actually close off the Mooladhara or you reduce the Mooladhara in Swadhisthana, because these are the troubling aspects of life. These are the aspects of life where you engage. Since we are not in ashram sadhana, we don't practice those things. Those are perfectly okay for ashram sadhana. Otherwise, you see it very often. The person has a lot of money, very poor health. The person has health, no money. The person has long life, no health, no money. It is because the Mooladhara is not vibrating optimally. The Mooladhara is vibrating in spurts. All three aspects, or all four aspects actually. Because the Mooladhara also has an impact on the mind. The four aspects of the Mooladhara, because the four things that we can be sure of. What are the four things we can be sure of? I keep saying it. We can be sure of our body, we can be sure of our mind, we can be sure of our emotions, we can be sure of our breathing. These are the only four things we can be sure of. Yes, we can delude ourselves about them, but at least we know this is what is in our own experience. Yeah, everything else fundamentally is actually not a real truth, because we don't really know them. But your body, your mind, your emotion and your breath, you know them. It is your own experience. It is not something you are hearing from somewhere else. Yes, you may misinterpret the messages your body is giving you, your emotions are giving you, your mind is giving you. We all know that. But fundamentally, at a very deep level, they cannot lie to you. You can lie to them. Which is why all yoga is working with these four: body, mind, emotion, breath. Body, mind, emotion, breath. Organize all of them around the one thing that India has been obsessed about: consciousness. The more you organize these things around that central pillar of consciousness, and in our system we stand like that central pillar of consciousness, yes, the better and better your life becomes. One day I'll talk about the multiple beings that reside within us, and what we need to do about it. It's very interesting how we all are a multitude of people. We are not only one person, and how we organize it around that center. It's actually an advantage to be many people. Because we are not organized around that central aspect of consciousness, it is a disadvantage, because we feel pulled in many directions. But if it would be all organized around that central aspect of consciousness, it would become tremendous. Those who become very successful, subconsciously their life has been such. Their Vasana Samaskara has been such that they know how to integrate all those multiple. Most of us, our mind, our body, our emotions are all vibrating in different places. They are not in one line. If actually you could bring your mind, body, emotion, and breath into one line, it would be an amazing thing. And most of the time, that's not happening. And all our efforts are just this simple thing. They must all be brought into one line. They must all be brought into one plane, rather, because it's a three-dimensional thing. So the Mooladhara's basic color is red, but the red is that sense of fire, because it is where the Agni Sarpa, the serpent of the Kundalini, rests. The serpent of the Kundalini, the Agni Sarpam, is the actual elan vital, the actual force of life, the actual thing that evolved us from amoebae into human beings. It made us move through plant and animal and higher and higher states of consciousness. The Mooladhara is where that rests, which is why it is not brown in color, it is red in color. Actually, the chakra system is very simple. You just have to think of the Vibgyor thing. The spectrum lights and the chakra system is exactly like that. The foundation is red. So when we are working with Mooladhara, we are working with the life process. Very consciously we are working with the life process so that the state of our health, the state of our money, the state of our longevity, because to achieve something you also need certain span of life or certain vibration of life. All those things you work with. Now, because spirituality today for some 400, 500 years has been a sort of otherworldly renouncing, denying, to focus on your body, to focus on your money is regarded as a non-spiritual thing. Nothing could be a more catastrophic mistake. Because money is also a divine vibration. And this is something that people simply don't get. Yes, it is a divine vibration that is in the hand of pretty bad energies because we allowed it to be so. We need to grab it back. And the state of the body, you do not need to allow your body to be the way it is. The body is infinitely plastic and can be changed, but it is better to go for health rather than to go for certain dimensions in the body. Most of us, we have these set social notions of what looks good and what doesn't look good. So instead of going for health, we go for the looking good, which is completely wrong. Go for the health in time. If you really, really want it, your body will start accommodating. Your body will start fluctuating and coming to that. And the money aspect, we really need to deal with the money aspect, and the Mooladhara is what matters. So strengthening the Mooladhara is very important to live in the world. Now, what do we do about that? How do we strengthen the Mooladhara? There are so any of the energy healing systems. But like I said, because of the people's societal embarrassment about working with the Mooladhara, our system, what we are doing at Spiritual Breaths, perfect. Because no matter what you do, you're basically the focus has to be on the Mooladhara. Even when you energize a murti to worship at home or in a temple, the first and most important thing is how do you energize the Mooladhara Chakra. If that doesn't work, the murti starts leaking energy. And all our energy loss, all our tiredness, everything is basically Mooladhara leak. If your Mooladhara becomes healthier, you will notice the first change in your eyes. Now, what has the Mooladhara got to do with the eyes? Because 80% of our emotional energy and 80% of our mental energy goes from the visual. We are over dependent on visual. Blind people, always their other senses become what we call overdeveloped. Actually, that is not overdevelopment, that is how those other senses always function. It is because we have become so used. So to strengthen the Mooladhara, the yogis had a trick. They had a very famous trick which they still do. They would go into forests. Because the minute you go into a forest, you notice something very, very interesting. Your vision becomes less and less useful. There is so much sensory overload. There are so many trees, so many plants, so many, and even the hearing becomes less and less useful because, if the forest falls silent, there is problem because there is an apex predator in the vicinity somewhere, and all the birds and animals have fallen silent for that reason. Otherwise, the forest is a cacophony all the time. There is, so you cannot rely on your ears. You cannot rely on your you have to fall back on something very interesting. You have to fall back on your sense of smell. You actually start negotiating through your sense of smell, and the Mooladhara is fundamentally connected with the sense of smell. At a very, very deep level, because the sense of smell is the faculty, as they call it. It is the most sort of physical aspect of the breathing ability. Yeah, the breath, the most physical form of the breath is the sense of the smell. So the Mooladhara is connected with that, with the sense of smell. Now, sense of smell is how we respond to food. Do we like it? Is that tasty? We smell it, we start salivating. So gluttony also, unfortunately, it comes from the Mooladhara. And then you look at Ganpati, it's there anyway. Because it is a survival chakra. It is the survival chakra. Fight or flight. Yes, there is an aspect of sexuality also connected with it. Because sexuality, after all, is about survival of the species, even if not individual survival. But sexuality primarily vibrates in the second chakra, though it is a big mistake to think that the Mooladhara is not directly connected to the erotic or to the reproductive. No, it's not. The chakras are not forts. They are not castles walled off. They are zones of vibration. At one particular spot in the body, that vibration is more intense, which does not mean that in the other places the vibration doesn't exist. It just means that at one point we can find that the vibration is more intense. And not even in the physical body, in the energy body or the pranic body. So this sense of smell, it's actually your sense of smell goes haywire. It's one of the first things that happen when the energy starts moving, when the Kundalini starts moving. Two things happen. Either you begin to sense disgusting odors, or the other thing is like, किसने अगरबत्ती जलाए रूम में? Who has, because you get fragrance, you start sensing fragrance. I remember what happened to me once, because this business of fragrance happens all the time with me. Many times in meditation, people say somebody had lit agarbatti somewhere. No, it was not that. It was just that the Mooladhara was working well, so the sense of fragrance was coming. But when my Mooladhara Chakra really kicked in, this is going to sound quite dirty, but it's just so interesting. For about 4 days, every time I would go to do big job, it wouldn't smell bad, it would smell fragrant. What on earth? When we say it smells like shit, it should smell like shit. It shouldn't smell like incense. The Mooladhara had just kicked in so heavily. And it had kicked in that positive vibration so heavily that it overpowered even the biological. It was just one of the strangest, and very often you will find it in yourself. People will say to you that, what is that perfume you're wearing? It's a very unusual perfume. Not so. It's just that your Mooladhara is functioning very strongly and a certain. Now, people who are emotionally messed up and messed up in energy, you immediately feel it, because even if they are wearing very beautiful perfume and still they don't smell right to you. They smell dirty. No, so very often our disgust for bad odors is not. Our Mooladhara knows that there is too much entropy there. There is too much dissolution there, which is why garbage is collection of entropy, and garbage stinks. Yes, it's very simple. Garbage stinks, and that stink is a warning of entropy. It's a way for the human organism, for the human animal, for all animals to know. Avoid stink. That way is devolution, not evolution. Which is why the lighting of incense, the lighting of agarbatti is so important in early stages of spiritual practice, which is why temples do it, we do it at home, because directly without our knowing it, it goes to the Mooladhara. The physical sensation of smelling that, apart from the fire thing, I've explained the fire thing and creation of Akasha, that that physical sensation of beautiful odor immediately triggers off. So yogis have experimented with all these things. They have experimented with what works for what chakra. And universally you will find, and people doing energy work, people doing readings, people doing crystal ball gazing across the world without knowing why, what is the first thing they do? Yeah? Smudgy. Yeah, smudgy. They burn sage, they burn aromatic herbs. And they don't know the reason why. The reason is it goes directly to Mooladhara. Immediately the Mooladhara starts vibrating in a very powerful manner. In a positive manner, not in a negative manner. Because the chakra can, I mean, it's not really true that if it goes clockwise it is good and if it goes anti-clockwise it is bad. That's not really true. It's a very rough estimation thing. Like I say, I'm not explaining what a chakra is because that is really complicated headache. Do 5-6 years of working with the breath, have a few horrifying and beautiful experiences, then I'll start talking about the chakra, and what you can do with the chakra. But there are these external sources of aid, and the sense of smell is one of those external sources of aid. You can immediately strengthen the Mooladhara. Which is why to be called smelly is not a good thing, but to say that, yeah, that sense of discrimination. Why do we like good odors and why are we so rejective of? Because that it comes from that Mooladhara, it comes from that deepest level. So the yogis would actually go into the forest because they wanted to cut down the reliance on the eyesight. They wanted to cut down the reliance on the, and you had to develop your sense of smell. And the minute you develop your sense of smell, your Mooladhara becomes strong. Yogis never did anything because it was fun or it was entertaining or whatever. They did it because there were hardcore practical reasons. So to going into the forest was a practical decision. It was a practical decision because the Mooladhara had to be strengthened. And from the Mooladhara, since it is the Mooladhara, the core foundation, from the Mooladhara only the other. So of course, by the time usually they had abandoned, so there was no longer any desire for the financial vibration. It was merely about strengthening the body, strengthening the Ayu. The Ayu is the span of life, because you need to uh, you need to do that much. You need those years. You need those years of effort before you can get through. So they would do that, but you can actually work with the Mooladhara, and it's not a coincidence that Ganpati is the person who decides whether money will come into your life or not. He is the filter. He is the gatekeeper. He is the gatekeeper. When Sri Aurobindo started, he made the decision that this embarrassment of spiritual community is always going around with begging bowls and barely surviving has to stop. And he sat and he did some processes, and today everybody is benefiting from that. Spiritual communities nowadays have too much money, some of them. But it was a change he did, and the change was directly working with he and the mother. It was directly working with the Ganpati energy. the Ganpati energy said, okay, now for spirituality, I'll ensure that money does flow regularly. So in Bombay, if you look at it, it is under the control of Ganpati, but it's basically people are only interested in the money side because obviously health does not. Apparently, you lose 5 to 6 years of life if you live in Bombay. So your life expectancy actually goes down by that much. So that aspect of the Mooladhara is not very strong here. But it is again a tragedy because fundamentally Bombay used to be, Mumbai city as it used to be is very ancient. It's over 2000 years old and there is a strong spiritual vibration in the city. It's a very strong foundational spiritual vibration in the city. The Mooladhara vibration is tremendously strong. So actually you can use it if you know how to tap into that earth energy that is present all over Mumbai. You can actually use it. Now these things have to be explained, these things have to be experienced, these things have to be told. Most of the cases because of these social norms as to Mooladhara, embarrassing. Forget about it. No, you have to strengthen your Mooladhara because your success not only in sadhana, your success in life also lives and dies by your Mooladhara. So you have to consciously spend time in strengthening them. Because the truth of the matter is, if your three lower chakras are strong, it's very easy to work with the upper chakras. If you work with the upper chakras only, they have tremendous problem because it is almost like an inverted pyramid. It becomes like an inverted pyramid and it should not be so. The lower chakra should be strong and then it's very easy because these chakras they vibrate automatically quite easily, but the Mooladhara to get it going in a proper manner is difficult because lifetimes of stasis, lifetimes of tamas, lifetimes of inertia. Near about the only time the Mooladhara really people start activating is when there is some kind of accident or there is some big trauma, life threatening as they call it. That's when they have the real experience. But you can have so many other experiences with the Mooladhara. Now, in sadhana, now some schools are saying that this privileging of the solar plexus and above has to stop. And we have to start working more and more seriously with the lower chakras because all life is yoga. We cannot tell people to come and sit in hothouse environments of ashram. But unless your Mooladhara is strong, how can you deal with the daily grind? So that is the real core, and each chakra also has a bija mantra. Now the bija mantra or the core vibration is the bija mantra. The core vibration of the Mooladhara is Lam. Some of them they say Lam, but actually that's less powerful than to say Lam. Lam. So that's a methodology that they used to have to strengthen it. Now, you fellas can do it because you all have done the Kriya Pranayama, but if you, without any kind of Pranayama practice or any kind of meditational practice, if you start doing Bija Mantra practice, big trouble. Huge trouble. Yeah, it's not recommended at all because all the jammed karma is jammed in Mooladhara basically. And the bija mantra will start shaking loose the karma. The karma is not being dissolved, it is only being released into your life. So there will be enormous trouble. But the mantra is there is no reason to conceal it because now you can do one simple Google search and it will come up. But if you're not in meditation and you're not in pranayama, don't do bija mantra sadhana. Also you must be initiated. You must be initiated so that it has optimal. No doubt if you do that, if you can just feel the way it vibrates, you can see the difference there. And when you vibrate it, most of the time what do people do? When they're doing the Bija Mantra sadhana, the chest is vibrating and the third eye is vibrating. Not where it is supposed to vibrate. You're supposed to do lang and you're supposed to send it down to the Mooladhara and vibrate it there. Most people find that difficult. It takes some practice, it takes some help. So I don't recommend that beginners do Bija Mantra sadhana. It is not at all a thing that beginners should do. And there are so many other methods to strengthen Mooladhara. This is not, Bija Mantra sadhana is always to, once it has, the chakra has got active, then you do the chakra dhyana so that whatever karma or whatever karmic processing is happening imperfectly starts happening perfectly. And it starts throwing off, and ultimately the Bija Mantra sadhana will cause the petals to fall off, which is not an easy process. Sometimes it's very violent, sometimes it's very piercing. So again, for those things to happen, your Mooladhara has to be very strong. Most of what we experience, the disturbances in the Kundalini activation in the Jagran, is because our Mooladhara is not strong. And the Shakti, once aroused, will start pushing its way forward. If it meets an obstruction, it will bulldoze through. And that is what causes the pain and the trauma and the mental and emotional disturbance and just the general feeling of I am falling apart. It is true, you are falling apart because the Mooladhara is not strong. So, in that sense, I cannot overemphasize the need for working sensibly with the Mooladhara. And okay, let's not get into why it is not so. At least we should have more sense of that. Okay? Alright. Sarvam Shivam.